So by now you should be trying to get your head around how did they manage to get themselves involved in Constantinople. I have to say, I do have a personal preference for the Fourth Crusade. Of all of them, it's my favorite one because it's just so crazy. It's just insane. How did any of this happen? And here we are, hundreds of years later, still trying to make sense of some really bizarre decision-making processes. I mean, number one, they are desperate for money, all of them, and Constantinople has got that in spades. They're lured by Alexius Angelus, who's later going to be Alexius the Fourth Angelus, because his father, Isaac Angelus II, had been blinded and deposed by his brother Alexius Angelus III. Being blinded is a fairly common thing to do in Constantinople. To get rid of an emperor, because, and actually this is pretty common across medieval societies, is belief that if you were blinded, you were incapable of ruling. So to blind and thus be deposed, that's kind of a Byzantine way of doing things at this point. It's happened before. The Crusaders also know that Byzantine support can make or break a crusade. We've seen that before, especially when Alexius is like, I'll give you 10,000 soldiers, we will maintain 500 soldiers in the Holy Lands, and we'll make Eastern Orthodoxy obedient to Rome, which, of course, they've just been excommunicated. They're like, oh my God, talk about getting back in the Pope's good books. We would just, we'd be in such good books with the Pope if we managed to do that. The Crusaders had already done a deal with Alexius and Philip of Swabia, who was the vassal of the Crusaders. So after Alexius was killed, no one was going to pay the Venetians and the Crusaders. The Pope knew of this scheme, and he told Boniface of Montferrat, do not get involved. This is only going to get worse. Do not get involved. Alexius, as in the fourth, the usurper, as it were, was very unpopular with the Byzantines, and particularly when he then actually did try to pay the Crusaders for their assistance. The Crusaders, meanwhile, were really annoyed that they were stuck spending time in Constantinople. This was not what they signed up for. And then they were not paid what they were promised. So they were like, right, okay then, we feel entitled to take it back by whatever means necessary. So Alexius the Fourth, because we've already deposed the third, now it's the fourth, he's now replaced by Alexius the Fifth. Even the Byzantines love the same name. He is Alexius V Murtzophilus, and he was made emperor, and he didn't get on with the Crusaders. The Byzantines, however, just had to give in because the Crusaders were already past their previously impregnable walls. You can read about the taking of Constantinople. One of the big impacts it had was on relics. We know that our Crusaders love them some relics. There is a list on Moodle which begins first of the highest importance and then works its way down. So I encourage you to read that. Relics, as we know, everybody wanted them. They are a trade good already by this time. What actually happens is that they flood the market. They flood the Western European market, making them, a commodity, even more so a commodity. Medieval standards also, we've got to remember, they're different to us today. Plunder was okay. And that includes plunder of religious things, because remember, number one, Eastern Orthodox are the wrong type of Christians to these people's minds. And number two, they have all sorts of ways of justifying it, like, the saint, we were allowed to take it, the saint obviously wanted us to do it. They have some very crazy thought patterns. Patrigiri is a good one to read about. It's called Furtus Sacra, on the theft of relics. I'm amazed there isn't some massive psychological study of it. They did behave very badly, though. All that being said, we have to ask ourselves as well, how much of this would have been overlooked, forgiven, and not even documented had it been directed at non-Christians? Is it because, yeah, they're maybe to their minds the wrong type of Christians, but they're still Christians? How much of it would have been acceptable? Was it, say, actually targeted against Muslims? So there were ultimately a lot of effects on the capture of Constantinople, both on the Byzantine Empire and on the West, because of all the complications with an actual Byzantine emperor. The Crusaders made their own emperor, and that was Baldwin of Flanders. He became the Byzantine emperor, Baldwin of Flanders. It's so bizarre, even in 2020, to say. This means that it's not actually the Byzantine Empire anymore. I am incorrect in describing Baldwin of Flanders as being the Byzantine Emperor, because it ain't the Byzantine Empire. It's the Latin Empire of Constantinople. That is what the new name is. And being, good Frenchmen, they do what they always do in the East when they have conquered somewhere new. They make it a feudal state along Western lines. And somehow this manages to plod along until 1261. So a really impressive amount of time considering. The official Byzantine state is meanwhile exiled to Nicaea. That's where they go and hide out while the Westerners are doing their thing in Constantinople. The big debate is over to what extent it sounded the death knell of the Byzantine Empire. Because as we know, 1453, the Ottoman Turks capture Constantinople, and that's the end of the Byzantine Empire, and so begins the Ottoman Empire. So there are wildly differing opinions. For example, Runciman, he says that the sack of Constantinople was so destructive, it just mortally wounded the entire Byzantine civilization. But Stephen Runciman is famously pro-Byzantine, so he's a very biased historian. On the other hand, we've got Southern, who's like, it's a minor blip and a pretty messy history in the Byzantine Empire. Pope Innocent III, you might be like, well, maybe he's happy. No, he's not happy either, because he knows that the two churches are definitely not going to be unified now, because by conquering and attacking Constantinople, they have absolutely ruined the chances of unifying the churches ever again. There's not going to be any trust between East and West from a religious perspective. But he did sort of go, well, look, okay, this is an S show, but maybe we might actually stand a chance of conquering Jerusalem at this point. As we know, the Byzantines already hated the West. They really, 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 really hate the West at this point. And the Latins did kind of suck the life out of Constantinople. They didn't preserve it terribly well. All of this by, turning the West and the Byzantines, who were allies against one another, it facilitated Muslim expansion further. They were like, oh, great, they're distracted. We can move now. The Crusader states were the victims of this, in as much as is left at this point, because the efforts, they're not getting the full force of Western defense. It's been split amongst many different places. So they're kind of left without the support from the Byzantines that they used to have, because when it suited the Byzantines to have the Crusader states as a buffer, they did help. And now they've only got one ally as opposed to two. Now, they don't go on to the Holy Lands. That's why Pope Innocent III is like, well, we've got a history here of being in Constantinople. This means that we can be successful for the real deal, capturing Jerusalem. But they don't even go to the Holy Lands. Probably their greed is satisfied, but also they've got to protect the Latin Empire of Constantinople. They've got to protect the lands that they've already conquered, the way that they, pretty much failed to after they created the Crusader states after the First Crusade. It satisfied their religious fervor too. Of course, we know Crusaders always pent up with religious fervor. Well, God had helped them do this. Obviously, God was pissed at the Greeks for being the wrong type of Christians. Hey, that's taken care of. Their religious fervor is dampened. And they really were like, oh, well, we've got Constantinople. Jerusalem is inevitable. We're totally set for Jerusalem. And actually, to flip back to this previous slide, you can see there's a purple line to the Holy Land. there are some who are like, okay, this is not what we signed up for. We're going to the Holy Land. They're really like a footnote because, yeah, I think we can guess what happens there. It's not successful. Let's go back to our friends Venice, though, because the big winners here, it's Venice. They are owed, and they've already done a deal to split the spoils of war, which means Enrico Dandolo, the Doge, he buys Crete for 1,000 marks. Now, guys, look down to the very bottom of this map. That's Crete. It's a whopping great Greek island. It's a nice island to buy for 1,000 marks. Because of this pre-existing agreement, Venice gets 3/8 of the empire. And this includes a large chunk of Constantinople, particularly the Venetians. They make sure they get the port. They get Adrianople, which is also a major city in the Byzantine Empire, and they get a huge chunk of the Asia Minor coastline. They get rights to other islands. They get rights to Western Greece along the Adriatic Sea. So that's the bit of Greece that's nearest them. So they're pretty hyped. Yeah, they've made a real success out of something that should have like actually been a complete disaster for them. They also get the title. Their title is Lord of 3/8 of the Roman Empire, which is a very mathematical title, but you know, they like it. They like it. Madden terms Venice, and Madden, who writes your textbook, has actually also written about Venice in more detail, including histories of Venice. He describes Venice at this point as being a maritime empire. It turns a new corner for Venice. It gets even better for Venice because in 1211, they defeat their main rivals, the Genoese. And Venice is the water-based powerhouse of the Mediterranean Sea. Okay, so that is it for the Fourth Crusade. There's a lot more we could talk about here because, I mean, this is just an S show of a crazy, crazy crusade. You've got another question to answer, and then you've got a flip grid, and then remember as well, we'll do the little informal Zoom check-in. So if we want to be like, what the heck was going on there? We'll have opportunity to talk about it face to face and try, you know, we're not going to get our heads around it. It's all crazy, but at least, you know, be united in our, how did this even happen?